Welcome to Brain Chat with the Nerdy Neurologist. I'm Dr. Mitzi Joy Williams, and I'm your board-certified neurologist and MS specialist. My mission is to engage, educate, and empower those affected by MS to become an active part of their healthcare team. Here on Brain Chat, we'll be talking all things MS, health and wellness, advocacy, and we'll throw a little bit of music and music therapy in there as well. Thank you so much for joining us, and stay tuned for the next episode. Welcome to Brain Chat. Happy Monday. It is a marvelous Monday and the first day of spring break here in Georgia. But I'm very excited to be here with you all and excited to talk about a topic that is very near and dear to my heart, the National African American MS Registry. So you guys know how I do. I'm the nerdy neurologist, Dr. Mitzi Joy Williams. Type in the chat where you are logging in from so I can give you guys a shout out. Thank you so much for spending your Monday night talking a little bit about MS, a little bit about research, and I cannot wait to introduce my guest. But before I do that, did anybody watch that Versus last night with the Isley Brothers and Earth, Wind and Fire? It was so good. I mean, it was 4 hours, but it was really, really good. So anyway, if you guys love music, you know I'm a music lover, so I was in musical heaven, especially when they started singing and playing the guitar and all of that good stuff. So I see some folks logging in from Covington, Georgia, with neighbors to me here in Atlanta. I see ATL is represented here, Indianapolis, Kansas City, Orlando. I love it. I love it. I love it. So thank you all for taking out this time. And we are going to go ahead and hop in this conversation because it is going to be good. You guys are not going to regret coming and logging in tonight. So I have 3 amazing and esteemed guests with me. What I will do is I will bring them up one at a time. We'll have them introduce themselves and we'll get into this discussion about this MS registry. All right. Very good. We will start with Dr. Annette Howard, who's in Houston, Texas, an amazing neurologist and MS specialist. I'm so excited to have you here, Dr. Howard. Can you tell the people a little bit about yourself?
Well, hey, Mitzi, I am so delighted to be a guest on your esteemed program. Thank you, and I'm excited to participate. I'm from Houston, Texas. This is where I was born and raised. And after I did some schooling, medical school in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, I came back to Houston and then did my neurology and internal medicine at Baylor College of Medicine. Then I did academic medicine as full-time faculty at Baylor, and then went into private practice a long time ago in 2001. And so I have what I call a little MS shop down here. But what makes us special is that our mission is that we treat the whole person. And so that means we're geared towards education and treatment, not only for the patient who has MS, but for those who are significant in their lives. So that's just a little bit. I'll be glad to take any questions. But again, Mitzi, I'm delighted to be a part of this group with my other esteemed colleagues tonight.
Okay, I'm sorry about that, Dr. Howard. I lost you for just a few seconds. And you said your mission was that you treat the whole person, and I missed that last part that you said.
Right. I said our mission is to treat the whole person, which includes education and treatment, not only for the person who has MS, but for those significant people in their lives.
Absolutely. Because MS is a disease that not only affects the person who has it, but their whole family. MS is really a family disease that affects friends, family members, loved ones, spouses, children, parents. And so that's such an amazing philosophy. All right. So next up, we will add one of my other favorite Annettes, Dr. Annette Okai from Dallas, Texas. And I saw some folks who were logging in from Dallas. Dr. Okai, welcome to Brain Chat, and tell us a little bit about yourself and where you are in practice in Dallas.
Hi, Dr. Mitzi. It's a pleasure to be on here, my dear friend. I'm glad you invited me. I am currently practicing at Baylor University Medical Center. I am the medical director there, and I will be transitioning to North Texas Institute of Neurology and Headache for the clinical directorship for MS in Plano. And once again, I'm an MS specialist. Like all of us on here, did a fellowship in MS and treat MS and treat everything that comes with MS. So treat the whole person as well and everything that affects them. So I really enjoy what I do. I love clinical research as well. I participate in a whole lot of research trials. And once again, my passion not only is taking care of the patient, but also opening avenues and experiences for them that they may be able to have access to new and innovative drugs as they go about their MS journey. So thank you for having me, and it's a pleasure to be here with all the other panelists.
Awesome. All right. And last but not least, we will have Dr. Dorland Kimbrough, who's at Duke University, come and introduce himself and tell us a little bit about his practice.
Hey, Mitzi, Dr. Williams. Hello to Doctors Howard, my two favorite Dr. Howards there. We are really fortunate to be able to do this show. So thanks for the invitation again, Mitzi. So I am at Duke University. I'm an assistant professor of neurology here in the MS and neuroimmunology division. I was a Duke undergrad, so it's sort of like a homecoming in a way. And I see patients with multiple sclerosis and a lot of other conditions that have some similar manifestations, but they operate a little bit differently. So things like neuromyelitis optica and some other things that are in that spectrum. So I do clinical research. I teach medical students. I am fortunate to be able to give some talks here and there and both educate some colleagues and to do some outreach with patients, and glad to be on the show with you.
Awesome sauce. Well, let's get into this conversation because it is going to be good. I am so excited. I have three of the premier experts in the country on these topics of diversity in multiple sclerosis and who really understand the need for increased diversity in clinical research. And particularly, you three are also very important to me because we're involved in the first national African American MS registry, which has really been a dream for many, many years that has finally come to fruition. But first, let's talk a little bit about kind of the role of registries in research. And first, before we even do that, let's back up a little bit and talk about some of the need for diversity in clinical research and why something like the National MS Registry is so important.
I'll take it away, Mitzi.
All right, take it away.
Great. So in this country, unlike other European countries, I will say, for example, we have a different healthcare system. So it's difficult to ascertain the exact number of patients with MS. It's difficult to get information that is uniform across the nation. So one way to get around that barrier is to form registries. And registries help us answer some of the questions that we cannot answer in the face of not having a single system. And what we realize, we as a group here over the years, is that MS is rare as it is. It's still considered a rare disease overall, but MS in the African American population is really understudied. So one of the ways that we try to close that gap or fill in that gap of how many people in the US live with MS, how many African Americans in the US live with MS, how does it affect them, is to have registry where we can do surveys and answer these questions. So primarily, registry serves as a vehicle for us to go and look for information that can be applied to the general public. It can be generalizable to the entire nation and have a good representation, as opposed to a piecemeal of information from different regions around the world. So that's one role of a national registry. That's one role that it serves in answering certain questions and filling gaps in care for people living with MS, and especially African Americans living with MS.
Absolutely. And so when we think about, you mentioned other countries, there are other countries in different parts of the world where MS registries are a national phenomenon, meaning everybody with MS is enrolled in that registry in that country,
Yes.
so that they're able to track things like what types of treatment people are able to get on, what types, or how often they're able to see the physician. And so they're able to do those things kind of in real time. But here in the US, we don't have a national registry for everybody with MS. There certainly are lots of research studies that are done in different parts of the country. There are groups of people or consortiums, like people from different institutions or different MS clinics in different states will get together, but there's really not a full national registry. And then specifically, there are certain populations in MS, as you mentioned, Dr. Okai, that are underserved. So Black people are one of those populations. There's a lot that we don't know about Black people with MS. And there are other groups that are also underserved, like, people who live in rural communities, and also people who are over the age of 55 who maybe aren't included in some of our studies. So there's a lot of gaps that we have, and the registry is just one way to kind of fill that gap. Dr. Kimbrough, tell us a little bit more about what a registry means. So, is it a registry like, when you get married or you have a baby shower and you go sign up and ask for gifts? Like, what does a registry do, or how do people get involved? What does it entail?
Yeah, so not quite like a gift registry, but the idea is that,
okay, so no gifts. We're not giving gifts. Darn. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. All right.
But it allows people to basically take survey information and to provide some detail about some demographics. Oftentimes there's questions in there about how folks are managing MS and what their situation is like. And when you can have a broad range of people that are responding to these surveys and registering with the group, then you're able to look at the larger populations and answer questions that were harder to answer by studies that didn't necessarily include a lot of members of that group. So for example, there are clinical trials that don't necessarily have a large number of Black patients in them. And there's a variety of reasons we can speculate or get into about that. But when you have a focused registry, then you can basically reach people directly and have folks respond, and to try to provide some information that we can all look at as a group and answer more research questions that help everybody.
Absolutely. So the key things I think that are really important that you said there is help everybody, right? So by some people participating, it certainly can help a broader group of people, but many registries often involve questionnaires. There are some that involve, physical exams, et cetera, but many of them are questionnaires, meaning things you can fill out online, that are fairly easy to access. Dr. Howard, why don't you give us a little bit of context about why this is particularly important for the Black community, or like what is so important about this registry coming out at this time for our community and the people that we serve living with MS?
So I would say that a registry is a data bank. It's a place where you collect information. And our goal with this National African American MS Registry is to include every single Black person that we know of who has a definitive diagnosis of MS. And it's a way that we can begin to understand what is MS in Black people. There are three groups of folks that I'd like to say. There are those that actually know, there are those who think they know, and there's those that don't know at all. And when it comes to what we've learned about Black people with MS, it's just not a whole lot. And so basically we've taken everything we've learned on about 96 to 99% of white people throughout the world, and then translated that and to hope that it'll work on Black folks just because it's worked in them. Well, the time has really passed that we find out for sure whether it will work on Black people or not. And so that's really been the motivation for starting this data bank that we call the registry, is to collect information that will help us understand what is MS in Black people. And just as an example, one of the things we could do is determine whether all of these 20 plus MS treatments we have out now really work in Black people. I mean, we've all been, whether you've been in MS for a short period of time or for, as I'm what's called an old timer, but there are lots
Mature.
of
Seasoned.
I'm a seasoned old timer. I don't mind saying but no matter how long you've been in this, you'll be confronted with MS patients who will ask, how do we know I really have MS? Where do I go to learn about MS, and how many people like me have MS? Where did I get this MS? You know, knowing that most of the information you can find will be about mostly Caucasian or white people. And so we're trying to do something about that and give you what you need as well as what we need and our other colleagues need to make intelligent decisions about what we're trying to accomplish in, you know, giving you the best treatment possible. So it's something that's long overdue, but something that this registry finally came to fruition for us in September. And we're just about trying to recruit and get people to join the journey with us as we try to learn as much as we can about what it means to be Black and have MS.
Yeah, so I think there's so many things you said that are so key. But I remember when I first started doing talks focused on African Americans with MS, people would ask me to do a talk for Black History Month, and I literally could print out every article written about Black people with MS, you know, except for maybe the ones that, you know, I had to pay for. But I could print out all the articles and I could fit them in one 3-ring binder, right? That's how little information there was. And there still is very little, less than 1%, you know, of our literature is about, you know, minority patients with MS. But we have all these studies that suggest that, you know, certain populations do worse. Black people do worse. Hispanic people do worse. Men do worse. But we just don't have the data or the information to really understand why we're seeing these things that we're seeing. What are your thoughts about, you know, Dr. Okai, some of these gaps in research and maybe some of the reasons that we don't have as much involvement in research as we'd like to have?
Well, there are several reasons, and I can list a few. So first of all, MS was initially thought about as a Caucasian disease. So literally, people were being taught that MS does not occur in Black people or people of color. And that's not a new phenomenon. I mean, up until the 80s or the 90s, that was the teaching and that was the thinking. So people weren't really looking for MS in this population. They were trying to find alternative diagnosis as to why people were experiencing symptoms that they were experiencing other than MS. So early trials, that could be one reason. And of course, there's the elephant in the room, and it comes up every time. There is the mistrust of the system and what the history, the legacy of the medical and research system on African Americans in the United States. So that has led to some mistrust overall and led to less involvement in that. Then you have the socioeconomic status that affects how people see the care, how they access the care. That's also a huge issue. So if you do not know, if you do not have the ability to access care where you should, then you may not be involved in trials. That's another reason why there's a gap in care. And then there is just some people prefer to go a different route when they're diagnosed. Some people may be unaccepting of the diagnosis and it may take time. But all of these are woven together. So it's not one particular thing. It's several things overall that really affects low enrollment in clinical trials. And that's one reason why it's important to get educated, to get the information that you need to know that how we conduct research now is quite different from how it was conducted in the 60s, 70s, or even the 80s. The 80s was when we had a huge change in that. And having this information and understanding the process can also help how people look at the whole system as a whole and how they respond to that. So in terms of the gaps that we're seeing, you look at how the message is relayed to the patient, what the messenger that is given the message. You
That's
look at
extremely important.
very important. You look at how the patient is receiving the message. Is it culturally appropriate as well? And then you also look at all the other factors. If they are not accessing the centers that are conducting research, that's one reason they may not be included. If they are unaware of what the study is, one reason they may not be included. Insurance reasons. Lots of people go through peaks and valleys when it comes to the insurance coverage, and they may be lost to follow up to the medical system for a while before they come back in. So it's just several things all at once that lead to this gap in care, to this low enrollment number that we're seeing in most of our clinical trials. And then some people on the side of, and let's not leave it all up to the patients, right? Let's look at
Absolutely.
us as providers. Are we really offering the patients what they need, the education that they need, the studies that we have? Or do we take it upon ourselves? Well, I wouldn't bother because I know I'm not going to get an answer from them, or this patient is not going to be interested. We make those assumptions without even asking the patients. So it comes from both sides. It comes from the provider side and it comes from the patient side. It comes from societal side. It comes from the cultural side, and it's just a whole melange of things that makes this difficult to really get the information. But the way to go about changing that is to start one piece at a time. And starting with, okay, let's start the registry. Let's see how many people there are in the US, how many African Americans there are with MS. Then you go to the next question, how does MS affect them? How does insurance, socioeconomic impact affect them overall? So as I said, lots of things come into play when we are talking about the gaps in care, but we have to chip away at those gaps and fill it in one step at a time. We cannot solve the whole problem all at once.
Absolutely. I mean, you said so much. I mean, like I'm mentally saying, pausing on points in my head to see what I want to emphasize that you said, because you said so much good stuff. But I think something that you did say that really stuck out to me is that I really try to convey when I'm giving, or talking about information to people living with MS, their care providers, or to our industry partners or to my colleagues, that I try to make sure that we understand that it's not just about a lack of participation, and so whenever we talk about clinical trials, we say poor participation. And even though to an extent that's true, I feel like when we frame it like that, we put all of the onus on the people who have the condition, and we're not recognizing that there are, barriers on the healthcare provider perspective. There is bias where people don't tell people necessarily about trials. Also, if we think about the way that our clinical trials are set up, we may automatically exclude certain people because our inclusion and exclusion criteria are so strict, or they have so many visits that for someone who works, an hourly job, it's impossible to take, 10, 15 days off to be in this trial. Who's going to take care of the kids? Who's going to get you to that center? There's no compensation. Like, there's so many different things that play into it, but I like to make sure that we, understand that it's not just that a person doesn't want to participate, that there are a lot of other barriers. I think another point that you brought up that was really interesting is we talk about distrust of the medical system and we talk about bias. I recently read an article, and I've read several articles that talk about things like the Tuskegee experiment and the Tuskegee legacy. And I think it's very interesting because there was a project done called the Tuskegee Legacy Project where they looked and kind of surveyed, hundreds of people about their distrust of research, et cetera. And many people didn't know what the Tuskegee experiment was. Like, even when I give a talk, people will say, well, they gave the people syphilis. And I'm like, well, they didn't give the people syphilis, but there are a lot of misconceptions. And a lot of people actually have distrust of the system because of things they experience now, right? So when they go to the doctor and they feel like their complaints or their concerns are ignored, they experience bias today, which affects their ability to want to participate in the clinical trial and in the scientific process, because, it's not just about what happened to mama and what happened to grandma. It's like what happened to me last week when I went and I said my leg wasn't moving and they said that, I had a cold and sent me home, so there's a lot to unpack and a lot to peel away there. And I'm going to pause right here. And for those that have questions, please feel free to drop your questions in the chat. We'll have a chance to answer some questions at the end, but we're having this great discussion. I'd like to hear your thoughts, Dr. Howard, about kind of this need, how we can address these issues with better understanding these populations.
Well, I think that, where we need to, we always have to acknowledge the elephant in the room. And I guess without kind of beating it over the head with a 2x4, but it's really, really important. And I think there are a lot of young people who may not even really remember the Tuskegee Institute project or the Henrietta Lacks story. They may not even know that, but it's just amazing how different some patients feel that they, the way when they access the system, they just don't feel comfortable in it. And see, MS is such an all-encompassing diagnosis that, we find that communication and being partners with the doctor and the healthcare professionals that are treating you is critical to your success in doing well with MS. And, if you're just being blocked at the very entrance of the system, it's just really hard to get down to the nitty gritty and be sure that you're on the right or the appropriate treatment, and that you're getting your symptoms that you live with on a day-to-day are being managed. Are you being instructed on how often and where to get an MRI scan? I mean, those are the things that you can successfully deal with when you've got a partnership or a relationship. And we're still stuck. Many Black patients are still stuck at the getting the right relationship part. And so, we've got, as Annette said, it's a huge apple, and it's bitten in different places. And certainly with the African American Registry, we're trying to put the apple in one place and, see if we can successfully bridge those disparate parts so that we can. You know what did Maya Angelou say? When you know better, you do better. Well, we want
Right.
to know better about Black patients with MS so that we can therefore do better. And being a part of the registry is, as Dr. Kimbrough said, it's a worthy endeavor.
Mhm.
At some point, you got to look beyond yourself and you want to do something for other people. So you can do something for yourself and for other people by being a part of this registry. No money is involved or exchanged. As soon as you join, you become anonymous. That means we don't really know who you are or where you're from. And it's just about you and your MS, that we then take what happens to you along with what happens to every other Black person that's involved in the registry. And then we try to analyze that and come to some real conclusions and not have to rely on what other people have said about what it's like to be Black and have MS.
Absolutely. And what you said was so key. You become anonymous, right? So, one of the concerns, that many people have is what happens to their data. How is their data protected? So we don't have, a Rolodex with everybody's name where we're looking at people's names. It's really once you fill out those questionnaires, all we look at is what we call the de-identified data. So, we look at the information you enter, but we're not looking at your social security number or anything like that. And I think that often is a valid concern when you hear about a lot of the data breaches at Amazon and everywhere else. But your data is protected within that database. And so tell us a little bit, Dr. Okai, about how this all came about. So tell us how did it all start, Dr. Okai?
Well, for those of you on the program, Dr. Williams is actually my MS twin. That's how we
Don't
refer
you
to
see the
each other.
resemblance? Don't you see it,
Yes,
sisters?
exactly.
Sisters from another mister.
We started as MS fellows. We got to know each other when there weren't any. There weren't a whole lot, put it that way. There weren't a whole lot of people that looked like us, but we had a love for the field and we had a passion for MS, and so we decided to go into that. And when we met and started on this journey, we noticed that it was the same for patients. So we gravitated looking for other people that look like us to be our mentors to get us through this. And we realized patients also didn't have people that look like them when
Mhm.
there were drugs that were approved during the programs and talks that we did. It was all about the Caucasian population, and this conversation started almost a decade ago
It did.
almost a decade ago. And but of course, being new and having to build up and having to find your way around this space, we always kept that in mind, and we kept talking about it. And in come our seasoned mentor, Dr. Annette Howard, and a few
Mhm.
others, and we said we have to do this. We have to take a step
Mhm.
because we cannot continue to use the information that we got from 99% of the patients in the trial are Caucasian, and we're getting all these signs that, oh, this does not apply when you're dealing with a Black person. Oh, this information does not apply when it's a Black person. This person presents differently. So we started to see the signs that this is different, and we need more answers, and we need good scientific data instead of just observing and saying we observe that this is what happened. And so after a few years, we finally had an organization to help us put this registry together, and that's Providence in Portland, Oregon, along with our good friend, Dr. Stan
Dr. Stan
Cohen.
Cohen.
And so Dr. Stan Cohen, Dr. Mitzi Williams, Dr. Annette Howard, and Dr. Annette Okai, we say we are going to do whatever it takes to get this off the ground. And with lots of talking and lots of wheeling and
Lots of meetings.
lots of meetings, we got Providence to say, okay, we have this nonprofit arm, we can host this registry for you guys, and that's how we got started. I mean, there's a whole lot of backstory to it, but basically this has been a long time in the making, but we needed the resources, and we needed support, and we needed backing. And it was only through persistence and perseverance that we have come where we are now. And then we started to bring other people in the fold. Dr. Kimborough came on and said, look, we need to really get together, get the data, get people involved so we can start to have quality scientific data for this population and answer the questions that needs to be answered.
Yeah, absolutely. So what got you interested in being involved, Dr. Kimbrough, other than we probably bombarded you and were like, hey, you need to get involved?
So it's kind of a perfect storm of good reason. So we got good expert quality people, number one, on the project to start with. Number two, we have big questions to answer, and we have a lot of unmet need to try to address here. So it's kind of a no-brainer, no pun intended, to join this project. And like you were saying about the looking up those old articles, and you can basically maybe fill a binder, maybe just a small amount of articles that have been done over the last, frankly, century or so. If you go back digging in PubMed, I think it's just a good opportunity for us to start really scientifically addressing some of the problems, as opposed to just kind of saying, well, we look back in, a cohort of a small number of people, and this is what we saw. We want to try to be a little bit more thorough than that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I see that we have a couple of questions here in the chat. Why don't we pause and answer a couple of questions, and then we'll see where we go from there. So we'll start with this question. This is a softball. What are the early signs that you see in MS in the Black community, or are the symptoms the same for all groups? Whoever wants to take that one.
Okay, I'll take it.
Take it.
You see, that's the whole crux of what we're trying to get to in this registry, because they're going to, even amongst the four of us, you'll probably find 4 different opinions. But I'll step out there and say what mine is. I actually think that the symptoms that Black people face are the same symptoms that white people face. My problem is that because of all the things that Dr. Annette Okai spoke to, the system, the disparities, the barriers that we have, keep Black people from accessing the system the same way that white people do. For example, the first symptoms that white people may get, the very first signs they may get, they have a tendency to reach out to the healthcare system and ask, is this important? I don't know, this happened, but is this important? Whereas my experience has been that Black people will tend to overlook the symptoms and explain them on something else. I was tired. I worked too hard that day. And because the earliest MS symptoms tend to be milder, they may come and then go away to then reappear sometime later. Then, that's how Black people kind of miss it a couple of times. before they get something so serious that causes them to reach back out for some additional help. And so I think that if we taught more people about the earliest signs of MS, that I think more people would step forward, and they either would be because of MS or not because of MS, but we would not be so long and late in making a definitive diagnosis as we are even today.
Yeah, I agree with that. And the other piece is, again, looking back at the healthcare system, right? Because MS sometimes is one of those diagnoses that you have to look for. It has to be on your list, right? And so if you see, let's say, a young, woman of Northern European descent, and she has numbness in her arm, or a symptom, MS may be higher on the list for some physicians than if you saw a young Black woman. I still have people that come into the office today who say that the doctor told me I couldn't have MS because I was Black, right? Which we have data from 2012, almost 10 years ago, suggesting that the risk for MS is highest in Black people. But some of that hasn't filtered down into the community. And so some people also come late to diagnosis because the symptoms go away. And, the doctor says, you have a mental health problem, or,
Stress.
you're depressed or you're having stress, when really they can't feel one side of their body. And so I think we have to make sure that we address both sides of that, in addition to encouraging people to advocate for themselves. I think that, one thing that we can do is to, make sure that we stress the importance of self-advocacy. And I had a great talk with Dr. Mary Hughes on my first podcast, and we talked a lot about firing your doctor. And she was like, listen, if you're not getting what you need, they need to get fired. So hopefully I don't have a lot of people fire me, but some people need, if you're not getting the answers that you need and there's something wrong, it's okay to move on and get a different opinion somewhere else. And I think that also keeps people back from getting diagnosed as well. Any thoughts on that, Dr. Kimbrough?
Yes, I would just second what you and Dr. Howard was saying. I don't think that it's not that the symptoms are different. I mean, it's the same disease itself, but sometimes the time that people arrive or the stage of the diagnosis that they arrive in may be different. There's been some research papers that suggest, and they're a little bit old papers, but they say things like transverse myelitis might be a little bit more common, or that if there's optic neuritis, which is just vision loss or inflammation in the back of the eye, that can be a little bit more severe. But that just reminds me of something I'll just bring up for a moment here. We're talking about the MS registry, but there's also other diseases like neuromyelitis optica. And some of these have a little bit higher prevalence in folks from different regions of the world. So for example, in the Caribbean, it's a lot, there's a lot higher incidence of that down there. So some of those older papers might have been confusing NMO and MS, but I think the larger point still stands that the symptoms are essentially the same. It's just that the severity is usually worse, and sometimes people are coming to attention a little bit later.
Absolutely. So the end of the day, listen, if your leg stops moving or your arm is numb, that is not normal. Okay. Go to the doctor and get checked out. I have people come in and say, well, my arm just went numb for like 3 days. I thought I slept on it wrong. I'm like, come on now. That's not normal. That's not normal. Okay. So if something is wrong, go get checked out. If you don't get the answers you need, please, please, please don't stop there. You can keep searching until you get the answers that you need. There's another question, which I think I'll kind of distill down, that basically is asking about, can their children get MS? So tell us a little bit about if MS is inherited. Do we see that more in the Black community versus other communities? Is it inherited? And if so, do we see it more in the Black community or other communities?
Short answer is that it's not directly inherited. It's not a guarantee, or you can't sort of just do the math like with some diseases and say that you have a 50% chance or 25% chance. There's not direct heritability like that. Actually, the rates are fairly low, considering that you can have twins with MS, and there's a much lower rate than you would expect. And if one twin has it and the other, and looking at the other twin. So I should double check some of the papers on this, but we're talking about numbers like a 2% chance, 2 or 3% chance of a child inheriting MS from a parent. And that rate, to my knowledge, is not different depending on background. But again, to the point of studies, you know, most of these studies are done in European cohorts. I don't suspect that it's going to be much different, but it's actually a fairly low chance of, it's higher than the general population, but it's actually a fair low chance of passing, quote unquote, passing MS from parent to child.
Yeah, that's excellent. And so, you know, those are some good questions. I see a couple more questions. We can't answer specific treatment related questions because although we are doctors, most of us are not the doctors of those here who are following the show. So we can't answer specific questions about your treatment. But I want to circle back, you know, as we're kind of coming toward the end of our time, circle back to the registry. You know, I am so excited, and I don't know if I've conveyed that, but I am so excited about this project. You know, as Dr. Okai said, it's something that's been many years in the making. I have been trying to float around this idea of a registry for years and could not get very much steam behind it. And, you know, fortunately, Dr. Cohen came along as an amazing collaborator and worked with us to really get this thing off of the ground. And this is huge, you know, because there are all these gaps that we've been talking about for years. You know, one of the things that made me so excited about this work and doing things like this podcast and educating is that I really want to see visible change. You know, we've been doing this work for many years. Dr. Howard is the most seasoned among us, and we've seen something change, but we haven't really seen the needle move as far as we like to. We continue to get data that says these populations do worse. They do worse. We don't know why. We don't know what the solution is. And we just continue to keep seeing the same things over and over again, you know, and in order to see something different, we have to do something different. And so I'm really excited about this project because I think it really provides the opportunity for us to get people involved in clinical research, to help understand why we're seeing these trends, and ultimately to help us to better treat not only Black people with MS, but everyone with MS. And so I don't know if I conveyed that, but I'm just letting you guys talk, but I just want everybody to know how excited, like extremely excited I am about this registry. So tell us a little bit, we can start with Dr. Okai, about how people get involved. So what does it entail? You know, how do people get involved with this registry?
So it's quite simple, actually. So the website is up, but if you put in the National African American MS Registry, and it's going to come up in Google, but it's actually naamsr.org. And what happens when you get on there, you get to the landing page, and there is a link to sign up. Well, signing up is not the most important thing. After you sign up, you're going to receive a survey. That is the meat of, there you go. Thank you. The address is on the screen. But the meat of this matter is you filling out the survey and sending that information to the system. Once again, once you fill out the survey, once you sign up, you will get a unique identifier, and then everything else after that becomes anonymous. So no one will know your data by name. We cannot identify you. And that's important in clinical research. Everything needs to be de-identified. So no one can get into the system and identify people based on what they put in. But we really need the survey filled out. And the survey the first one is extensive because we have a lot of questions. But the good thing about it,
so get a snack, sit down. You're going to be sitting there for a little while, but you can pause, right? You can save your progress and come back, but come back. Don't just save it and leave. Save it and come back.
Exactly, because that's the information we are looking for to start answering these questions. So you can, if you have a short attention span, you can do a little bit, come back and then finish up. But it's important that you finish up. After you do that, then we aggregate the data to start answering the question. What is important to know that if you just sign up and do not fill out the survey, you're going to get reminders, but after a period of time, you become inactive. And we don't want that. We really want everyone to participate and be active. And once again, contribute to quality scientific data that can help answer the question. So the link is scrolling on the screen. You can go there, visit the website, play around. You will see what our goals are. You will see our mug shots, how we all look, and then our short bio on there. But once you sign in, please fill out the survey, and you make a survey over time. We do an annual survey, and then a certain quarterly, or as things come up, we send out surveys. But the important thing is to answer these questions, is to get the information from you, the patient, and it can only be done by your participation. So this is a personal appeal from all of us to help us make a change, make a difference by providing us the opportunity to help put the information and the data out there.
Absolutely. So if someone were to ask Dr. Howard, okay, well, what would I get out of it? Or what do I get out of filling out this survey or being involved in this research? What would be your answer to that?
So I think that if you went on the website and signed up and then did the very first survey, that would be making a huge contribution to our study of what is MS in Black people. And, you'd be one of the very first people to do it. Although we launched the organization in the registry in September, as is the explanation for everything, because of the pandemic, our recruitment has been slow because we've been confined to doing everything on the internet. But once we get the go ahead and can then start to travel a bit throughout the country, we're going to be coming directly for you, because we want you to sign up to be a part. I mean, this is the one thing that you can say, that this registry is by Black people for Black people. And it's going to be ours. And with your information, it's going to be a way that we can start to set the record straight about, no longer will we have to take somebody else's opinion about what MS is like in Black folks, but people will have to look to us to tell them what happens to Black folks with MS, because we're going to have the data, your information. And so it's just a matter of time, but the sooner, our numbers are, the word is getting out there, and thanks to Dr. Mitzi Joy, we're going to have more people to join up. But we want you to spread the word and tell everybody you know. And not only are you going to be an invaluable asset, we're going to show you and let you know exactly what it means to be a part of this. You're going to say, I contributed to that, and this is what they have learned from my contribution.
Yeah, and I think that key piece is so important. I think one of the things in the creation of the registry that we felt was extremely important was to make sure that we report back to people what happens to their information. So many times people participate in a research study and the information goes out into, research heaven, and they never know what happened. And so we wanted to make sure that, to the best of our abilities, we make people aware of what's happening with their data, and that we also give back, whether that's through educational programs, whether that is through our newsletter where we talk about different topics relevant to MS in the Black community or relevant to current research. I think it's so important to give back and to make sure that people know that we're not just taking your data and trying to get famous off of it, that we really are using these things to try to help the overall community. I had one question that I thought was very interesting that I will put up here. It says, can you join the registry from the UK? I'll let Dr. Okai answer that one.
Dr. Kimbrough, what do you think?
Dr. Kimbrough, maybe Dr. Kimbrough can answer that one.
I love
I
this.
don't know.
So, I would say for starters, when the person asks from the UK, I guess there's a couple things I think about. One, are we talking about someone that's like a UK citizen, but they're living here and residing in the States? Or are we talking about like straight from the UK and you live there and that's where you're based? As far as I understood, I think the registrants thus far are people from the United States, so U.S. citizens. That said, I do think it's a great idea to just as this ramps up, basically we could take this worldwide. I mean, I think there's a lot of populations throughout the Caribbean, throughout Europe, throughout Western Africa. The whole diaspora scattered around. So that's definitely something we need to talk about at our next committee meeting.
Right. So you've
So
given
you know
us
what?
food for thought.
So yeah, so let's tell the lady that ask her, does she have a relative that lives in the United States?
Well, I have a couple folks that follow from the UK. So I have some folks that do, some people living with MS that do follow the show and follow me on Instagram who live in the UK and have asked me about different things. But yeah, so we will get back to you on that. So the current answer is right now, as far as we know, is for US registrants only. But we certainly will circle back because we want to be as broadly inclusive as we can. And hopefully we'll be able to circle back and let people know about that answer to involvement from other countries.
The website will also have a newsletter. So she's welcome to be on the website at any time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So go ahead and sign up. You'll get the information. And trust me, as soon as we can, go worldwide, we will let everybody know.
And so,
go ahead.
I think, Dr. Williams, since this is the first undertaking that I am aware of that really focuses on Black people of African descent, per se, I think, as Dr. Kimbrough said, we plan to, we hope that we can make this more inclusive and take it worldwide, because that is a huge gap. We're talking about a gap that needs to be filled and addressed. So definitely that's a food for thought, and we're going to jump right on it and start discussing it right away.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So a couple more questions. I see someone said, will people with, I believe it said myasthenia MG diagnosis be able to register as well? Currently, the registry is only for multiple sclerosis. We are not currently taking myasthenia gravis, if that was what they were referring to by MG. But for right now, we're focusing on multiple sclerosis. And then I had someone else who said that they want to be a part. Oh, and we'll fill out the information tonight. Okay, let's do it. All right, we can't wait. We can't wait. All right, so as we're coming to a close, this has been an amazing conversation. Three of my favorite neurologists. It's so seldom that we get four, Black MS specialists all in the same place. This is just magical. But I want to see, why don't we kind of do a round robin and people just kind of give their parting thoughts as we get ready to log off, and encourage everyone to get involved in this initiative, that research is important, that we need to hear their voices, that they need to stand up and be counted. So why don't we just go around and everybody kind of give me your parting thoughts before we log off tonight. We'll go from the bottom to the top. Dr. Kimbrough, Dr. Okai, Dr. Howard.
Yeah, so there was a question earlier about kind of the benefits or the reason for participating in the registry. And I think about this for MS as sort of a smaller but no less important of the kind of the sort of civic action like people take when it comes to, let's say, voting or filling out your census form, things where if you are counted, then you're a part of the data that becomes used in decision making and things that will directly affect you and other people that are in your situation. So I think it's important for the broader community, both just for Black people that have MS, but also another point that we haven't talked about as much tonight, but I think in terms of the larger scientific framework, in a lot of medical conditions, one of the key ways that you study that condition is that you look at a population or a subgroup of people that seem to have more trouble with it than other folks do. You try to figure out why that's the case. And then when you do that, you're able to help the people that are having the most trouble or figuring out the nuances of what's going on with that group. But it also informs how you understand the disease for everyone, because there aren't going to be just necessarily neat buckets. It's going to be overlap between groups of people. So it's a exercise that I think will help everybody that has MS.
Awesome. Dr. Okay?
I like the idea of filling out your census form. I like that. I am just appreciative of being able to take this step in helping and facilitating African Americans with MS. And I hope that people will come along on this journey, that we can help improve lives, improve outcomes, and improve the quality of African Americans with MS, living with MS. And one way to do that is to really support the registry and sign up and be a part of the change, because that change can only come about when we all do our part. And I'm asking you to do your part tonight as well.
Awesome. All right. Dr. Howard, before you go, I see a couple of questions. So about if they can participate, if they're in Boston. The registry is for anyone in the United States right now. So it doesn't matter what state you're in. It's
With
for anyone
MS.
in the United States with multiple sclerosis, with a diagnosis of multiple sclerosis. All right. And Dr. Howard, our closer, give us our final thoughts.
So let me just say this. Thanks, Dr. Mitzi Joy, for having this on this evening. We're so excited about being able to tell MS patients about this registry. And if I were to say anything about the importance of Black MS patients joining this registry, I just want to say tonight on this program, you've had represented, Mitzi called me seasoned, but someone who's been in this for a couple of decades. Sandwiched in the middle, you've got people who've been in this for 10 years. And then we've got right at the beginning of his career, Dr. Kimbrough. And so no matter if you've been in this for a long time or for a short period of time, we've been listening to you on one side of the desk, in which you have asked, why did I get MS? Is this supposed to happen in Black people? What does it mean that I got it? What will I be like? And on the other side of the desk, you have us four represented asking the same questions. Why did they get MS? What does it mean that they will have it? How is it going to affect them? And so together, we hope to be able to answer those questions, and then to be able to share the information that you give, that we receive, with the rest of the world, so that they can better understand what it does mean, rather than to just theorize about what it is, but to actually have facts, data, and I guess what the young people would call receipts about really knowing what MS is. So thanks again, Mitzi, and invite us back in a couple of months so that we can see how well we've done.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone, for your time and your attention, for tuning in tonight. We will see you again in 2 weeks on Brain Chat with the Nerdy Neurologist. Tell a friend, tell a neighbor, and share the information about this registry. We can't wait to see you get involved. All right. Everyone, have a wonderful night.
Thank you, Dr. Mitzi.
Thank you.